are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome back into this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles. Really pleased to be joined now by my next guest on the podcast. He's the host of the Locked On Browns podcast. Good friend of mine. We've been doing some shows together since all the way back in 2018. A man of these two teams changed. It's Jeff Lloyd. Jeff, how's it going, man? Eagles-Browns joint practices starting on Thursday. I'm pretty excited. It's a good roster, 2 tough tests.
Yeah, and I think you get to this point of the summer, and look, I mean, everybody with their own locker room, you're getting tired of your own teammates. You miss your family, you miss your wives or girlfriends or whatever, and you kind of get, it gets to the point where emotions start running high within a locker room because you're competing against each other every day. Plus, at this point, maybe you're getting a little stale. I mean, because what everybody kind of brings. So, you kind of have to up your game here a little bit. You're going against new competition. And this is when you start to see, the nuances and techniques. You're doing them correctly as opposed to just going against somebody that you've beaten like a drum for a couple of weeks.
Right.
I don't think a lot of people, understand the importance of these joint practices. But, I mean, you saw it with the Browns. The Browns basically said, we're going to play our starters in the joint practices and actually not in the game on Sunday.
I think it's going to be the same thing for the Eagles, the game between the Eagles and Browns in Cleveland Sunday at 1:00. I'd imagine it's mostly backups for both sides. But Jeff, I do want to talk about the starters for a bit here with Cleveland, especially. What's the vibe in Cleveland right now? I was really nervous that Philadelphia was going to trade for Deshaun Watson during the offseason and create almost an impossible situation for me. And I feel like that might be what the Browns have right now, right? They're going to be good with Deshaun Watson in that roster. I thought the same thing with the Eagles and Watson, but how can you really enjoy that? Is that kind of the sentiment in Cleveland right now? How do you feel personally too, as a fan and covering that team?
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. I mean, it kind of has a little bit of a disingenuous feel to it.
Yeah.
You understand the expectations to it. I mean, like if you're going to look at it from a Madden perspective, you're like, wow, this is great.
Right.
But we all live in the real world, and you certainly, the actions and everything that's gone along with it. I think we finally have gotten to see Deshaun Watson maybe change his stance here a little bit, and you saw that Friday night. With the little interview he did with Aditi Kinkhabwala before the the Browns first showing in preseason, understanding that maybe this wasn't so much more about him and this was about actions that were done, and he can feel whatever he wants, but sometimes people take your actions and view them as bad. You have to understand that there is your part in that, and it was nice to finally at least get him to say some I don't know if I want to say it was totally an apology, but maybe understanding the situation he put these women in. But at the end of the day, look, we got to cover this team regardless. You don't get to choose the assignment, you don't get to choose the topic. Certainly this has been maybe a little bit more out of what our comfort zone is, or maybe exactly what my job truly is covering the Cleveland Browns. We joke all the time, I don't work for Court TV, I work for the Locked On Podcast Network, and I cover the Cleveland Browns, but kind of had to intersect both here. The thought process of where this could go with Watson when he eventually plays is certainly appealing as far as an on-field product. But I think the one thing, and this is for me what's kind of has hurt through this last 6 months, is I think people think that this team is just hinged to Deshaun Watson, as opposed to understand just how truly talented this roster appears to be.
Right. No, and that's the whole point and you're right, it's a tough balancing act of, I got to talk about the football side of this, which could be, and this was what I was nervous about, like with Cleveland, I think Philadelphia's roster is ready to go right now. And if you add a quarterback, and if Watson is who he was the last time he played, that's a top tier quarterback in the NFL. That's going to be a positive product to talk about on the podcast. But at the same time, with everything that happened off the field, it's like, that whole balancing act has to be, I'd imagine, frustrating too, Jeff, especially for Cleveland, because the Browns have waited so long for a situation like this, right? I mean, I live in Buffalo, New York, and I've seen the same thing with the Bills. It took 17 years to get a player like Josh Allen. It almost is like, I don't know, do some fans feel like they almost can't really even enjoy this, something they've been waiting for decades?
There's certainly certain aspects of the fan base that, it may have been a final straw for them. We'll see, do they start to slowly come back in September? If not, it's everybody's prerogative. I cannot tell anyone how to fan. Just like I can't tell the fans who are super geeked up and block everything out And, you basically your 9-to-5ers who say, you know what, I put in my time Monday through Friday. My one release from, everything, the stresses I put on myself is 3 hours of Cleveland Browns football week in, week out. It's a very, very touchy subject. And we've certainly had a lot of conversations going back and forth here with the folks at Tegna, with the folks over at Locked On about, the right way to talk about this, and trying to understand there's a balance between both sides as far as, understanding and respecting the situation, but also understanding and respecting the situation, for the Cleveland Browns. And, it's been difficult. I ain't going to lie. It's not been fun, but, hey, at the end of the day, it's a job like any other, and you got to do it to the best of your ability.
Totally agree. And then, Jeff, to stick with quarterback for a second here, but going off Watson, he's going to be suspended. It's just really now a matter of how long, not if. I mean, we already know that the 6-game suspension, we have the appeal. So what's the Browns' plan? Are they going to, does it depend on the length? Like if it's only that month and a half, is it going to be Jacoby Brissett? If it does go longer, are they going to explore a trade for somebody like Jimmy Garoppolo, try not to waste this roster? Kind of like with the Eagles, they traded the Minnesota Vikings back in 2017, Sam Bradford, after Teddy Bridgewater went down because they thought that roster could win a championship. Is that a similar sentiment with Cleveland? Or are they going to maybe get more aggressive if the suspension's longer, or what's the mindset there?
I do believe there might be the mindset in that Cleveland Browns front office and amongst the coaching staff. If we're talking, it does turn out to be a year. You look at a player like Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, just last year, dinged up, took a team to the NFC Championship game, wasn't healthy, so certainly wasn't playing to the best of his abilities. Came pretty close to winning a Super Bowl a couple of years before. And, you're looking at Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett, there's been, I'm not going to say, a lot of success. There was a, 17 touchdowns to 4 interception time in, over a stretch with the Colts. I do believe, and I do think the Browns believe that there's probably a number they feel comfortable with Jacoby Brissett at. But you can't tell me, looking at Jimmy Garoppolo versus Jacoby Brissett, if you're talking about 1 year and what's going to give you the best possibility of, the highest amount of wins to get you to the playoffs, I don't think there's anybody that believes that, Jimmy Garoppolo does not give that to you. Browns do have cap space. They can make that move if it comes to it. So we're going to see the way it shakes out. And this is where it's going to be a little different this week because, the Browns are in a tough spot with bringing Deshaun Watson in. Number one, he's rusty, didn't play last year. Number two, it's a brand new team. But also, you've got to get Jacoby Brissett ready because there's a minimum, at least to this point, that Jacoby Brissett's going to play 6 games in the same circumstances for him. New team, new system, new players. And the Browns have made that evolution this week where Jacoby Brissett is now practicing and performing as the number 1 string quarterback. There was, they knew they were going to have to do it. And for Watson, look, you're the $238 million man. The time you're going to miss, you got to be ready when you come back. The Browns can't just give you every opportunity for that type of money, that type of player you are. You better find a way to be ready.
Jeff, the joint practices begin on Thursday. The Eagles head to Cleveland, and I think this is going to be a great test for both sides. And the matchup I'm really excited about is this Eagles offense against the Browns defense. Jalen Hurts, I thought, had a flawless performance to start the preseason, 6 for 6, 80 yards and a touchdown in that opening drive against the Jets. But it was the Jets. We've heard reports throughout camp that the Eagles defense has really gotten the better of the Eagles offense when it comes to the first team. Eagles defense much improved. I think it's going to be an awesome second test too with this Browns team that, Jeff, I feel like they have studs on all 3 levels of the defense, right? I mean, I'm especially excited for that Eagles receiving core against the Browns secondary of Greg Newsome. You got Denzel Ward back there, Grant Delpit, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah against A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. The Browns, I mean, it looks like their defense is really good, right? They'll probably be able to carry depending on the quarterback situation if they have to.
And this is another one for me, because there's several storylines, several players for this Browns organization that haven't gotten their due as far as being spoken about. And that's because, with Watson, it takes up a lot of the headlines. But you look at the defensive ends. You start with, Clowney and Garrett. It was a beautiful duo last year. You only think there's going to be more success this year. Young defensive tackle play, and they looked pretty good Friday night. Jordan Elliott, Perion Winfrey, Tommy Togiai in year 2 had 4 tackles against the Jaguars. You get to the linebacking room. Jacob Phillips in his 3rd year now. This is a player that succeeded a ton, but has played very limited. So, but when he's played, he's been really good. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, I think he's going to become a household name this year. He has that He has that athleticism, sideline to sideline play type of player. Anthony Walker is kind of like the guts and the glue of that room. Denzel Ward, just off the PUP list. I don't know what we're going to get out of Denzel Ward this week. For me, I don't know if he's going to contribute in the joint practices. I would probably think he isn't. Greg Newsome, a little bit of a hamstring right now. He didn't play Friday night. But the Browns got to see their first overall pick in this past draft class, Martin Emerson, in the 3rd round. Had a phenomenal performance. PFF grade over 90. So you're going to see those guys. The secondary, John Johnson didn't play in the first preseason game. He'll probably get a little run this week, at least in the joint practices. Grant Delpit, Ronnie Harrison. They're loaded on the defensive side of the ball. The potential is there for this Browns defense to be a top 2nd, top 3rd unit in the entire league. The question is going to be is, can the offense do enough where the defense isn't getting gassed out by like the 3rd quarter because they're going to have to be on the field so much?
It's a good point. And Jeff, my last thing for you, going back to the offense really quick, what's the situation with running back Kareem Hunt? Obviously a guy that's had success with Cleveland over the years, wants a new contract. I've seen Eagles fans kind of throw around his name as a potential trade option. Eagles fans, some aren't really big fans of Miles Sanders and the depth of this football team. I'm not a big fan of giving up assets for a guy that also wants a new contract at this position, considering you got to figure out things with Miles Sanders. But what is the situation with Hunt? I know the Browns also have Chubb, so are they going to really consider giving out a second, semi-decent contract to that position?
This is where it's difficult for Kareem Hunt. And I think the main problem here for Kareem Hunt, and look, a lot of running backs, a lot of players have been in this position before. I have no money coming to me guaranteed after this season. So what happens if I get hurt? You know what I'm saying? That where does that leave me? So, you understand it from Kareem Hunt and his camp standpoint. Meanwhile, the Browns, and I think there's a understanding between Hunt and with the Browns that he's not going to be a part of this team in 2023. So as much as the Browns would like to say, hey, we're going to get this worked out with you, we're going to get this taken care of, and understanding that we're probably still going to move you sometime in 2023. What if he gets hurt? And now the Browns are saddled with a contract that they never wanted to give out to begin with. So it's a tough spot to be in for both parties. But Kareem Hunt, what are you going to do? Sit out? You don't play? You don't produce? Ain't nobody going to be writing you a check anyway after this season. The Browns have Jerome Ford. They have Demetri Felton. They have Dearness Johnson. They are loaded at the running back position. And the other thing for the Browns, it would be easy to say, well, then just go ahead, let Kareem get what he wants this year, da-da-da-da-da. But if you're the Browns, you are already going to be without Deshaun Watson. You're with Jacoby Brissett. Besides Nick Chubb and Amari Cooper, Kareem Hunt is the 3rd best player on your offensive side of the ball with the ball in his hands. What are you going to do? Cut your nose off to spite your face? It would make 0 sense for the Browns to do that. So certainly a difficult, slippery spot to be in. But Kareem, you understand the situation. You're sympathetic to the situation. Obviously fingers crossed for him. You don't want to see anything happen. I hope he goes balls out. Hope he gets paid. But the Browns really, really need him. So moving him due to the fact that he's probably uncomfortable with, the lack of future money, it's a tough spot to be in for him, for Kareem Hunt. But for the Browns, hey, look, their hands are tied and they really need this player.
It's a tough spot overall to be a running back in that kind of situation, especially when you're a guy behind Nick Chubb and there's no future with that team. Super interesting stuff, Jeff. We got Eagles-Browns at 1 o'clock in downtown Cleveland. Joint practice to start on Thursday and Friday. Going to be interesting to watch. 2 really good teams, I think, in the AFC and NFC this year, man, and we appreciate you coming on the show today to talk about it.
Always a pleasure, Lou. You know that.
Thanks, Jeff.